Welcome to a show all about the booming BC craft beer industry. Today, meet the people behind Fulmer's Folly in Pitt Meadows. As well, we'll take you out to Delta and introduce you to the people that make the award-winning Four Winds Brewing. And we'll take you up to North Van and show you how you can take this Hearthstone beer and make this beer cocktail. I'm Joe Leary. Join me for this episode of BC Brew OnTap. Welcome to BC Brew OnTap on Shaw TV. It's a conversation about the BC brewing industry. I'm sitting around a table with a couple of dudes wearing makeup. Not bad, huh? Rob Davis is the co-owner and brewer of Fulmer's Folly Brewing Company in Pitt Meadows. Steve Markovich is the sales manager. Welcome to the program, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
My pleasure. It's always good to see where this BC craft beer industry is going and growing, and Pitt Meadows is finally in the picture. What took you guys so long?
Honestly, it took a long time to even occur to us that this was a possibility. It's easy to see other people do things and to think, hey, I could do that as well. It's a big leap. So we're content in the construction industry and eventually just decided, you know what, we got to try something different.
Each municipality is kind of different and some easier than others to deal with, I'm certain. Was City Council supportive initially?
Yeah, absolutely. They were very supportive of us. It took a little bit of a sales pitch just because it is so foreign to that region. There wasn't really another brewery we could point to and say we want to be like them. We ended up bringing pictures of other breweries, the Port Moody ones, for example, and we started trying to explain the clientele we're going for, the type of atmosphere we wanted to foster, and basically we just convinced them we weren't Budweiser, Molson Canadian moving into the backyard. Right. So once they understood what we were going for, we got tons of support.
Okay, so you build it, you brew it, you sell it. Okay, so Steve, when all of a sudden Pitt Meadows is in the mix, you've got to go to a clientele that's already bombarded with craft beer from Lord knows wherever. Mm-hmm. Was it an easy sell? Were people immediately buying in? Certainly the locals, I guess, were.
The locals immediately support both government and the private side for retail and then for drafts. Going in, we've had some tremendous support in Vancouver with such places as Legacy Liquor, St. Augustine's, and we're growing. So my duty is to get us out there and to conquer and to definitely be one of the top craft breweries, not only in Pitt Meadows and the Tri-Cities and so on and so forth, but in Vancouver as well.
Well, and therein lies the problem because, again, you know how valuable tap space is,
Absolutely,
right?
Yeah.
And that is valuable real estate.
Yeah.
So you go to any bar that's got, even if they've got like five taps, good luck. If they've got 10 taps, you got a better chance. If they've got 20 taps, you got a decent chance. Yeah. But at the same time, like it all comes down to what is in that glass, right?
Absolutely. It comes down to, we bring samples, or Steve brings samples of our beer to everyone he's trying to sell it to. And if they like our beer, there's a good chance we get a tap. If they don't like our beer, there's no chance. So all of our beer has to be good. We're big fans of variety as well. So we like to try to bring a big selection. We think that helps our odds as well.
So I'm going to ask you, Steve, as the sales guy, rather than rely on Rob, but tell us about some of what Fulmer's Folly is known for.
Well, what we're known for is our Hotbox IPA. It has been a tremendous hit. And at the brewery, and as well as certain locations on draft that I deal with specifically, we have that on a nitro tap.
I was going to ask about that because I have actually tried that on nitro. So for those that don't know, a nitro version of an IPA. So what exactly does that mean?
Well, Rob could probably explain it better as being a brewer.
Okay.
So when you have a beer that's carbonated, there's a lot of carbon dioxide dissolved in the liquid. There's a small amount of flavor in there, but mostly you get a slight tingle on the tongue. You can see the head. With nitrogen, you're avoiding that tingle on the tongue. You're looking for a smoother mouthfeel. and you actually blend the two gases. So carbon dioxide still creates the head, but nitrogen makes it so it's smaller bubbles and gives this smooth, creamy mouthfeel.
It kind of looks almost like Guinness-like when it starts to pour.
Guinness,
that's a bad description, but I'm just trying to make a reasonable comparison.
It actually works as a pretty good description because Guinness is actually a nitrogenated beer, and it's the one beer that almost everyone has seen. So it's probably the best description just because it's common.
The thing that surprised me about Fulmer's Folly is that you guys are relatively new in the game, about a year old?
Yeah, a little over.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you've got, like, on your board in your tasting room, I couldn't believe, like, I'm looking at, what, like 12, 13 different types of beer? Even more.
Yeah, usually it fluctuates slightly. We have one empty tap at the moment, but we've also got a bunch of beer that just needs kegging, so we'll have it full soon. We actually have 20 taps we originally intended for just our own beer, but we decided to make one designated rotating guest tap just to introduce our neighborhood to beers from Vancouver and Abbotsford and Port Moody and so on. And we have one of our own brewed birch beers.
So 20 different beers. Are there 20 different styles of beer that one can actually produce?
Absolutely, really? and with variations on styles, you can make so many more than that. I think in our opening year, I don't have an exact count, but I'm pretty certain we made more than 40 different beers.
Good Lord. Okay, so Steve, I want to ask you from the sales perspective, if you're putting out a beer that just doesn't connect, for whatever reason, the retailers are going, sorry man, I'm not selling any of it, I don't want any more. Do you then go back to Rob and say, with all due respect, Rob, people just aren't digging this beer?
Oh yes, and it's happened. I mean, of course, that's working with Rob directly, working with the other brewers who I have tremendous respect for. At the same time, if a beer is amiss, it's amiss. And what we do is we go back to the drawing board. Ultimately, we have a discussion, and then we look at something different. Something that will be a hit.
And who wins the discussion, Rob? Are you, well, you know what, I own the brewery, I like this beer, I'm sorry, we're sticking with it? Or do you go, okay, I give up?
No, my way of looking at things is that I always like to try something different. No matter how much I love a beer, I don't buy it every day. So there's no one beer I'm so attached to that I have to keep remaking it. So if Steve tells me that our customers aren't liking something, I don't brew it anymore.
19221 122nd A Avenue in Pitt Meadows. It's called Fulmer's Folly, about a year in. Congrats, guys. Nice to see you.
Thank
Cheers.
you.
Thank you, Joe.
There is more BC Brew on Tap on Shock. So over 3 years in and continuing to kill it, and one of the breweries that you always hear good things about is Four Winds. So take us back to the origins. What did the concept start? Why get into beer?
Why get into beer? Why not get into beer, really? No, it started because my dad and my brother, Brent, they were passionate about home brewing, and they were home brewing together for a number of years before we got into this, of course. But it kind of started out of the idea that we just wanted to do something independent and something different and something we could be passionate about. And what happened was myself, my two brothers, and our father, we were all kind of doing our separate things, and my dad had retired from his previous position, and he was working on wooden boats, so he was building boats. Myself and my two brothers, we kind of quit the jobs we were doing, and we started just helping him build boats. And so all four of us were in the boat shop, and we were kind of working away on these boats. And it just so happened that my dad was brewing beer in the boat shop, and then Brent started brewing beer, and that kind of became the priority after a while.
And that probably coincided with the time that the brewing industry was really blowing up.
It was starting to, but that was a little bit before the sort of big boom that just happened. Talking sort of maybe 2009, 2010. And so we were working on these boats. They were brewing home brews, and then Brent basically realized that he really had a passion for it, wanted to see if there was a position for him in the industry, and kind of went and checked out all the breweries at the time. There was only 4 or 5 breweries in Vancouver at the time. He finally got a job with R&D Brewing, got on as a keg washer, quickly became the head brewer there, learned the kind of industry there, And then and my dad was able to gather some funds and get that together, and then we kind of joined forces and opened up 2013.
So it's a family business, but Garrett, you go back with the history of the family. Now, did you have a background in beer or just an interest in beer? You look like you might have been a server at some point or something.
I had an interest in beer. Like you said, I knew the family for a long time and had actually worked with them in previous businesses for a very long time. And yeah, for a while I was working in the service industry, and when these guys told me they were about to start a brewery, I always said, as soon as you need somebody, let me know. So here I am.
So did you foresee the industry in 2016 going into 2017 being where it is now?
It's happened a lot quicker than I expected, for sure, yeah. I mean, when we opened up, there was, like I said, 4 or 5 breweries that had been doing it a long time in Vancouver, and there weren't that many popping up. Parallel 49 opened up a year before us. And then there was a few other startups happening, but then we opened up, and you know, we thought that you know, maybe 4 or 5, maybe 10 breweries would open up per year, but it's been crazy how many have been opening up. So it's amazing.
You're the guy working the streets in terms of trying to get your beer available at various locations. It's probably good for the consumer to have a variety of choices. But from your perspective, I mean, obviously you guys make good beers, there's no question about that, but it's hard. It's got to be harder getting tap space, especially for new people coming along.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many bars and restaurants that are interested in supporting craft breweries. So, you know, I think a few years ago, the average bar maybe would have 1 or 2 taps, you know, kind of reserved for craft beer. Now almost all the taps seem to be going for craft beer. So, I think if breweries really focus on the quality of beer, customers are going to want to drink it, and restaurants are going to want to pour it.
Now, I know you guys have some hardware, actually some plaques behind me. I mean, Beer of the Year was one of the most prestigious awards you could possibly win. So does that just inspire you to want to continually kill it and make bigger and better beers?
Oh, totally, yeah. I mean, it gives you the confidence to keep pushing and trying to keep innovating and pushing the boundaries. It definitely inspires us to work harder and to create better and better beer.
I know that in the brewing industry, Garrett, there's a real camaraderie, there's a real kinship that's unlike any other business where people that are competing with each other get along really well. Is it the same from the sales side as well? Like, are all salespeople getting along really well?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I actually play on a softball team every summer that's made up of different sales reps from different breweries around town. We see each other out on the road every single day, say hello. We're often doing events together, and it's really nice. You know, we all get along, we share advice, and we kind of look after each other in a way. So it's a good industry to be a part of.
Where, if you could predict, I mean, given what we've seen happen up to this point, where do we go? Where are the next 12 months, 24 months going to take us beer-wise? What do you think?
We're going to see more breweries open up. There's a lot that are slated to open up, and I think that there's still plenty of market share for us to gain in the craft brewing industry. So, you know, as we convert the mass sort of beer drinkers over one person at a time, I think that there's plenty of market share to acquire and room for more people. I just think that it's going to basically it's going to ensure that breweries really work on the quality and the innovation and make sure that their beers are up to par, and that's going to encourage us all to do better and better.
The listed percentage of craft beer drinkers across Canada is like 20% or something, which sounds ridiculously low, but I think that's skewed because maybe the other provinces don't have anywhere near the same industry we have. I think in BC, the craft beer consumers got to be above 20%. Would you not agree?
Yeah, I think so. It seems to be, especially in the condensed Lower Mainland. But yeah, I don't know the exact numbers, but I think you're right.
How much did your job improve after the Beer of the Year award?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely helped. I think we right away had kind of created a good reputation for ourselves here in the Lower Mainland, and this just kind of brought some recognition across the country. You know, we are somewhat limited in capacity, so supplying all the way from here to Newfoundland isn't possible at the moment. But it's nice to know that people in other parts of the country have noticed us as well.
Last question goes to you, Adam. What does 2017 hold for Four Winds? Can you give us a little hint of something maybe to prepare for?
I think we're going to keep working on our barrel program. So the wood age stuff, you're going to see more and more of that. In the last 6 to 8 months, we've installed foeders. So we have eight 4,000 liter foeders from France that are now in the works. And so we're going to be working on the wood aged and just experimenting and keep pushing the boundaries.
Well done. Thanks.
Thank you.
Cheers. Thank
Thanks,
you.
Joe.
Post hair services for Joe Leary and BC Brew OnTap, provided by Bailey Murphy of Avant Garde Hair Studio in Yaletown at 1075 Mainland Street. For a list of services, call 604-688-1986 or online avantgardehair.com. Location services for BC Brew OnTap, provided by Mahoney and Sons at Canada Place. For a list of locations, visit mahoneyandSons.com.
Welcome back to BC Brew on Tap on Shaw TV as we explore all the people and the beers that make up the BC brewing scene. A great scene it is indeed. George Woods is the brewmaster from Hearthstone in North Vancouver.
You see him?
Good to see you, sir. Tell us about Hearthstone. You guys have been around, what, a couple, 3 years now?
2 years, yeah.
2 years,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, just over.
And I'm sure in that 2 years, without revealing sales figures and stuff like that, I'm sure you've seen phenomenal growth. Does it surprise you? Is there anybody in the BC beer scene that is even kind of surprised to see what has happened and what has transpired in a year or two of operation?
It's kind of hard to quantify, I guess. There's so many breweries and they all seem to be doing pretty well. There's not many of them who've fallen by the wayside, but I'm constantly blown away by how well we're doing. Maybe it's because I'm a bit of a pessimist.
Yeah.
I think if you expect something not to go well and it goes well, you feel like you've won. But yeah, it's been super surprising. Everyone's been so supportive of us though, and that's really helped grow us. People are so excited to have us around, and it's great to be part of the community.
Now, I couldn't help but notice your very distinct North Vancouver accent, but I think it's probably peppered with a little of something else. And where are you from originally?
From near Aberdeen in Scotland.
From near Aberdeen. Okay, so are the Scots known for great beers? I mean, we know that the Brits are known for their beers. Are Scots known for great beers?
They kind of are now. But going back historically, no, we're really well known for whiskey.
Yes.
But there was a company that I used to work for, Brewdog, who started the craft beer scene over there, and they took the American craft beer model. So now Scotland is known for its beer. Everywhere in Europe, if you say you're a brewer in Scotland, they assume that you work for Brewdog, or one of the many craft breweries that have popped up.
So the beers that you grew up on, and you've been here how many years now?
3.
3 years, okay. So the beers that you grew up on, when you first brought yourself to Canada, to Vancouver, were you amazed? Were you pleasantly surprised as what you saw here?
Yeah, I really was. I was amazed at the amount of different beers, the different approaches to styles. The different take on styles that I thought I knew really well, like IPAs and pale ales, something that I loved back home. And I came over here and I love them just as much, but they're very, very different. They're approached very differently, and I really like that kind of unique way of taking like the same style but changing it.
Well, okay, so you say it's approached differently. So how is the approach different? Like what is it you might do over there that you wouldn't do over here, or vice versa?
Traditionally, the beer back home is quite mild. IPAs are generally mild. They're 3 to 4%. They're very lightly hopped. There's not much aroma. A lot of earthy, kind of grassy bitterness. Lots of oats and wheat used, so it's a different type of malt body. There's not much colour in them. They're generally blonde in colour. Whereas here, you have the kind of more amber in colour. They're very kind of roasted malt forward that really helps cut through the bitterness and really plays with the aroma really nicely. So it's just a different take on the same thing.
Now, we've talked on the show many times about various ingredients that comprise a beer. And you guys do one with graham cracker.
Yeah.
How did that concept come about? Who was the one that said, was that you that went, I got it, I'm gonna do one with graham cracker?
I'd like to say it was me, but no, it was Darren.
Darren Holland, who's the brewing
Darren
manager.
Holland, yeah.
Okay.
So when we had first met and we were emailing back and forth about kind of what we wanted to do with the brewery, we hadn't even named it yet. We were talking about what we were doing. He said, I've had this recipe for a graham cracker beer that I've never made and I really want to do it. And I was like, well, let's give it a shot. Let's see what we can do. So we bought a whole load of graham crackers, put them in the mash tun there, and we found out that they don't impart much flavor. So we started adding kind of our own blend of herbs and spices and honey and vanilla and some other things to kind of give it that winter ale feel.
So with that in mind then, George, do you feel that there's anything off limits? If you can throw graham cracker into beer, can you throw gummy worms into beer? Can you throw M&Ms into beer? Is it? I mean, I know it sounds laughable, but I don't think anything is laughable anymore in beer.
No, absolutely. the limit is your imagination, you know, as long as it's going to taste good. Yeah, I think your only real limit is don't make beer that has gross things in it.
Yeah.
You know, if it's going to taste good and it works and you have a good reason why you're going to use those ingredients, like you could use gummy worms, you could dissolve them, you got a whole bunch of fermentable sugar in there. No idea what that's going to taste like, but yeah, like, the sky's the limit, you know, as long as you know it's going to taste good.
Okay, so we've seen in your 3 years here in BC, you've seen this industry. I mean, I know in the last 5-ish years, the industry has tripled, like the amount of breweries have opened up. And, you know, I know it's kind of probably like tapering off a little bit, but there still are more breweries on the horizon, both in the Lower Mainland and around BC. Where do you think the industry is in 5 years from now? Do you think it'll get to a point where it's stabilized and everybody that's in is doing it? Or do you think that perhaps, you know, there might be like a seismic? I know it's a loaded question, man. I don't mean to throw this heavy one at you, but I'm just curious what your take as a brewer is, from, especially having come from another country. Where do you think the BC beer industry goes in the next 3 to 5 years?
I think it's going to keep growing. I think it's obviously going to be a little bit of a drop off. But I think we'll get to a point where every locale has its own brewery, and that's going to be really interesting. It's going to be an amazing thing. I think since people have started caring more about what they're consuming, you know, people want to go organic, they want to go locally sourced. Everybody has a local butcher and a local baker, and now they get to have a local brewer, and that's going to become like a real big thing. Be like, oh, you know, I'm just going to pop down, see my brewer, get some beer, go see the baker, get some bread. And it's amazing. I think it's going to almost going back to our roots, you know, keeping everything local.
We've been up to your facility in North Vancouver before. We did a segment where we were pairing beer and food in the Hearthstone Tap and Forno. Is there like a direct correlation between the two sides? Like, do you work in conjunction with chef in the restaurant side? Does he come to you and go, hey, I'm looking to do this on the menu. You got some beer that might kind of complement that?
Yeah, so at first we already had all the beers in place, so chef kind of worked the menu around that, but when we talk about changing the menu seasonally, he's like, well, what kind of beer are you thinking about? Or I said, well, I'll ask him, like, what kind of food are you thinking about? I'll make something to pair to that, because that makes my job more exciting when he says, oh, I want to do X, Y, and Z, and gets my brain ticking, and I think, well, okay, this would work with that, this would work with that. We kind of hash out in the brewery, and, you know, we'll produce from there.
Great facility, great beers. Just very quickly, someone goes into Hearthstone in North Vancouver, what's the one beer they must try? Just one.
Right now it would have to be the Tiny Little Tart Sour Ale. It's a very light sour, dry hopped with Idaho 7 and Eldorado. It's absolutely fantastic. It's kind of changed my perspective on sours a little bit. I'm not a huge sour fan, but this one's nice and gentle. And
you're talking to the head of the class of not a huge fan of sours fan. I must try it. George Woods, pleasure, sir.
Thanks, Joe.
Hearthstone Brewing in North Vancouver. There's more BC Brew on Tap on Shaw coming up.
Host hair services for Joe Leary and BC Brew on Tap provided by Bailey Murphy of Avant-Garde Hair Studio in Yaletown at 1075 Mainland Street. For a list of services, call 604-688-1986 or online avantgardehair.com. Location services for BC Brew on Tap provided by Mahoney & Sons at Canada Place. For a list of locations, visit mahoneyandSons.com.
Welcome back to BC Brew on Tap on Shaw TV from Mahoney & Sons at Canada Place. Alex Lee is bartender and manager at Hearthstone Tap and Forno in North Vancouver. That's a pretty exotic drink. That's a beer cocktail.
Yeah.
So what is your beer and what did you make with it?
So that's made with our IPA. So it's got basil and grapefruit muddled with Hendrick's gin, simple syrup to cut the bitterness from the IPA, and then it's garnished with a grapefruit wheel and a little basil.
Okay, now as good as that looks, you're going to make me something completely different. So tell me, what are you making, and may I start? How do we start here?
Of course. So I'm going to make a bourbon sour, and then I'm going to top it off with our golden sour beer.
Okay.
So
what's important to note when you're making a beer cocktail? Like, I mean, is anything open, or is there some things that work with others and some things that don't?
With a beer cocktail, I think you don't want to take away from the beer too much. So you just want to complement both parts.
Okay. So, and the shaking is important, right? Okay. All right. Can you overshake a drink, or does that?
With egg whites, you want to shake it as much as possible and really get that frothiness.
Right. So when you're making something like this, how much trial and error goes into it?
Really depends. I mean, with a bourbon sour, it's kind of a no-brainer. Can't really mess it up too much. Our sour beer it's not too sour, so it's
Okay.
going to complement it perfectly.
Okay. So where do the concepts of beer cocktails come from? Like, I mean, you know, at Hearthstone, like, are you required to make these, or do you make them just on a whim, or
I
or
think
what?
it's not required, but in the craft beer game, I think when you've got a bar, you want to...
the beer scene is forever changing, so I guess with it, obviously, people must keep step and to make beer. That's it?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
There you go.
Wow. Okay, so this looks really cool. What now? What do you call this?
I called it the golden bourbon sour.
The Golden Bourbon Sour, and it's as simple as that.
Yeah.
Made in that quick a period of time. Alex Lee, bartender and manager from Hearthstone Tap and Forno in North Vancouver. And that's a wrap for BC Brew on Tap on Shaw TV from Mahoney & Sons at Canada Place. Once again, we always encourage you to enjoy all that BC Brew has to offer, but please remember to plan a safe ride home and drink responsibly. We'll see you next time.
Clothing for Joe Leary and BC Brew on Tap supplied by Red Dragon Apparel. RedDragonApparel.com. For BC Brew on Tap, this is Mike Schaefer.